On behalf of City Elders Virginia Action and Family Foundation Virginia Action, we welcome you to today's Senate Forum, and thank you for coming and being part of it, and thank you for being part of the process of our civil government. And I'd like to open this morning with prayer, and then we'll begin. So if you would join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' mighty name, Lord, we thank you for this time we have to come together, Lord, and we thank you for the freedoms that we have in the United States of America. Lord, we live in a blessed nation. We have lots of issues, lots of challenges, and lots of difficulties, but God, we are thankful. And so, Father, today I pray that as we have the forum, Lord, that you would grace us with your presence, Lord, that you would bless it, Lord, and I thank you for each and every person who is serving our nation in every capacity. And thank you for the candidates that are here today, Lord, to give their heart for what they believe for our nation and to share with us. And so, Father, we just ask that you would grace us with a wonderful time today, Lord, and guide us. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Well, good morning. My name is Marshall Patty, and it's an honor to have you all here. Thank the candidates for coming all this way. It was a couple hours away for all of them, and we really appreciate it. City Elders Action, some of the things that we do, we do 10,000 phone calls every election cycle. We door knock. We also do text messaging. But really, we just try to support our candidates and give people options. And so the thought of this was teaming up with Family Foundation, one of our great partners, and coming up with an idea to give these three candidates voice and opportunity to win your support. And so thank you all for coming out here. We have the honor of welcoming back Chris Saxman. Chris Saxman is a native San Antonian, served as a House of Delegate here for a number of years, and so we certainly appreciate his service there. He's now the director of Virginia Free. He brings decades of legislative experience to us. And he helped with the transition to Lieutenant Governor Earl Sears' inaugural team, and so she really needed that briefly there. We're kind of getting ramped up. He's a Washington Lee graduate, raised here in Stanton, who they owned a water business, their family, for years and years. Him and his wife, Michelle, have 4 children, aged 32 to 24, 1 granddaughter, and a grandson on the way. So welcome back. We appreciate you for volunteering and driving from Richmond to come out and help us out.
It's never a problem.
Right?
I enjoy it here very much. Thank you, Marshall.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be back here at Victory Worship Center. I've been here many times. It's especially gratifying to see my good friend Ray Eppert still a Steelers fan. We share that in common. Want to run through briefly the rules, just so you have an understanding with the format. It'll be 90 minutes. Each candidate will deliver a 2-minute opening statement, and each candidate will deliver a 2-minute closing statement. Candidates will be allotted 1 minute per question. Questions will rotate among candidates in a fixed order, ensuring candidates receive an equal number of questions over the course of the forum. Candidates are encouraged to engage directly and substantively with the question asked within their allotted time. Personal attacks on fellow candidates are strictly prohibited. Any candidate who attacks another candidate will be shut down by myself. That's probably the only thing you'll hear from me as a moderator. I don't believe moderators should say anything more than the questions and let the candidates have their say, because that's their job, and I try to stick to mine. I very much respect the candidates who step forward, and I want to give them as much time and attention that the audience deserves. While we stick to 1 minute, we will allow candidates to continue their answers, but so much. We'll ask them to wrap it up, and we do have a timekeeper to my left. All right. The introductions, I will do that in the order in which they will be initially asked, the first questions. David Williams is a Republican U.S. Senate candidate dedicated to conservative principles such as limited government, strong borders, and secure communities. Raised in a family rooted in service, Williams is a veteran who served as an infantry officer in the United States Marines during 2 deployments to Iraq before working in diplomacy for the U.S. State Department and as a case officer and chief of station for the CIA. Currently serving as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves, he lives in Loudoun County with his wife and 3 children and is now running for the Senate to continue his commitment to serving his country. Ladies and gentlemen, David Williams. Kim Farrington is a certified public accountant, inventor, successful entrepreneur, and respected public servant of 33 years. As an astute and dedicated steward of America's finances, Kim led major financial reforms at the Department of War, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Office of Personnel Management, and the White House, saving taxpayers over $1 billion. Kim became the founder and CEO of KTech, a small business focused on financial management, cybersecurity, and human capital management. Kim is also an inventor and holds 3 patents. Today, Kim lives with her husband, Dave, a retired Navy captain in Fairfax Station. Ladies and gentlemen, Kim Farrington. Bert Mizusawa. Major General retired Bert Mizusawa has been a Virginia resident for over 50 years. He grew up in Hampton Roads and resides in McLean with his wife, Amy. He served in the military for 41 years, commanded 4 combat deployments, and was awarded a rare Silver Star for valor while leading and rescuing a defector during an intense firefight. He graduated first in his class at West Point, has a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School, and was a MacArthur Fellow in International Security at Harvard. He served as a national security advisor to candidate Donald J. Trump and was President Trump's senior appointee at the CIA at the end of his first term. He and Amy share 7 children and 4 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, Bert Mizusawa. I'm going to begin with a question that normally is not asked of candidates because I think many candidates today suffer from a lack of name ID. We don't know who you are necessarily. It's just the nature of politics today. So it's more of a personal nature, but not too personal, just to get things going on. Consider it a stretching exercise, okay? What's your favorite book, David?
So I'm a big sci-fi guy. I like The Martian. That was really, for me, because I like to think of beyond and above and all the things, the great things that America has done. And so for me, I just love to read, but then be able to escape from kind of the realities of this world. So yeah, The Martian would be the big one for
Kim,
me.
favorite book?
My favorite book is the Bible, and I read it every day, and I believe that that is why I am here in front of you today.
Specific book of the Bible? I always ask that question because everyone goes to the Bible.
I would say the Psalms.
Okay, very nice.
Yes.
Bert, favorite book?
Well, thank you, Chris. Well, number one, I have many favorite books, but I want it to be topical. Today, my favorite book is something called Dangerous Games. It highlights serious incidents and casualties that fought for this country during the Cold War. One reason I like it, it devotes a whole chapter to me in it, and so I encourage you all to read it. Thank you.
All right. Kim, favorite movie?
My favorite movie is probably Top Gun,
Which one?
the first one.
Okay.
And that is because I actually have a convertible Z3, and I will never forget when I was working for the Department of Defense, now War. I actually was on a base, on an Air Force base at an event, and I remember driving my convertible top down around the airstrip. And as I was driving, there was a fighter jet taking off doing its practice runs. And that was the coolest thing I think I've experienced on an Air Force base.
That's pretty cool. Bert, favorite movie?
Once again, I have many favorite movies, but I do like The Godfather 1 and 2, which I see as one movie. Do not like Godfather 3. And I can empathize because every time I think I'm out, they keep sucking me back in. And so I'm glad to be back in this race and back in the fight. Thank you.
David, favorite movie?
So I would say Rambo, of course.
Rambo.
Number one, right? Because I like a good fight, and so that's why I'm running for U.S. Senate, because Rambo beat off the bad guys and the communists, and so that's the same thing that we're going to do. So
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised.
Let's go.
You'll be surprised how many times you're called Rambo from here on out. Congratulations. Okay, favorite TV show, Bert?
Well, this might not surprise a lot of you. I don't really watch a lot of TV nowadays with all the crap that's on there. I am very partial to YouTube. I think YouTube's better than Harvard University. I do spend a lot of time listening to it with earbuds, and I do get in trouble a little bit for that. But I think lifelong learning is important, and so I don't think TV's teaching us the right values and culture that we need today, so I listen to a lot of self-selected YouTube. Thank you.
Okay. Favorite TV show, David?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same. For me, I love history. I love the Revolution War, and Patrick Henry. Just reading up on the Virginians that really changed the trajectory of our nation. And so for me, it's always about history.
Okay. And Kim, favorite TV show?
I too don't really have a favorite TV show because I am not making time for TV except the news channels so I can keep up on what's going on in the world. And I think that our TV shows are, especially the reality TV shows, are a little extreme. Although I did have somebody tell me that they enjoy watching the news channels because they feel like, and I'm beginning to feel it, politics is the best reality show there is.
Last one. Favorite sports teams? Bert.
Well, my favorite sports team is the Washington Redskins. Back when they were winning, we bring the name back. Thank you. I've been living in Northern Virginia for a number of years now. I grew up in Hampton Roads. We were not blessed with a professional sports team. So, and I also have to throw in there, and I hope I don't alienate half the crowd here, but I'm partial to the Army team on the Army-Navy game day.
Oh, okay. Can't win them all. David?
Yeah, the same, Washington Redskins. But then also I am enjoying the USA these days while they're beating their opponents in soccer. So let's go USA.
That's, I got a question on that coming up. Go ahead, Kim. What's your favorite sports team?
I too am totally supporting Team USA in the World Cup, but when I'm not watching FIFA, I am a huge Ohio State Buckeye fan. Go Bucks.
You were doing so well. Dear God. She doesn't mean it. No. No, to get into the real questions now, I think we've been limbered up a little bit, the audience is joining us online, and I really appreciate your time to share more personal sides of the candidates this year, because we don't get that too often. Yes, David?
Can I ask one question? Can we get like little sheet of notebook paper and a pen up here, or is that too much to ask? Or
Sure, we have great staff working here. They'll be up in a second with
Thank
that.
you. No, we're good.
All right, you good?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so in order, we're going in order, David, Kim, and Bert. That's the way we're going to go, and we'll go Kim, Bert, and then David, and Bert. Okay. Okay. I spoke with two Republican Party officials on the way here, and they want to know how you plan on beating Mark Warner in the fall. David?
So this is a great question that we have spent a lot of time thinking about. So there's three things that we have to do. We have to first unite the Republican Party behind our Commander-in-Chief, President Trump. So I just met with him recently, 2 weeks ago, and one of the key things that he explained is that Virginia has to make some noise. And right now, we're not even viewed as competitive because we are not out there, we're not voting. And so in order for us not to become a blue state, we have to get out there, we have to get people out to vote. And then the second thing is we have to get the independent voters. That is something that we will be able to do and make sure that, that we're able to win in November against Mark Warner.
Thank you. Kim Farrington.
Mark Warner, last midterm election, only won by 0.8%. Ladies and gentlemen, we can beat Mark Warner. Yes. And the way I'm doing it is I am going out doing a listening tour and have been for the last 19 months. I've put over 50,000 miles on my car listening to Virginians before leading. That's how we're going to beat Mark Warner. He is out of touch with Virginians. I am in touch with Virginians. I can relate to Virginians. And that's how we're going to win, in addition to getting the 37% of independents that are not happy with Mark Warner, with the 12% of Democrats that are feeling forgotten by Mark Warner. Let's get those people out to vote along with our Republicans, and let's together beat Mark Warner to get well over that 1% we need to totally trounce Warner in November.
Thank you. Lastly, Bert.
First of all, for all the faults the Democrats have, and there are legion, they're not dummies, okay? We have to assume that Mark Warner and crew are watching this debate, and so why in the hell would I want to divulge my strategy in a public forum? And I will tell you, I am a student of strategy. I've had this discussion with candidate Trump in 2016 and in 2017 when I was the lead for his national security team during the transition. We do publish something called a national security strategy and a defense strategy, but I said it's nothing more than a glossy marketing document. Why would you want to advertise to your potential adversaries and your real adversaries what your strategy is going to be? It's kind of like running a football team. Everybody knows who the players are. Everybody knows your tradition, but you don't hand over your playbook. So I'm the only one in this race that was a victim of lawfare. And I will tell you that Mark Warner, and I'll give you a little hint, was Adam Schiff's counterpart, privy to the same intelligence, and he let Adam Schiff get away with lie after lie after lie, and he failed to exercise any leadership to counter what was going on, and it took this country down a steep slope during Trump's first term, and I will bring that up during the general election. Thank you.
Thank you. You have, David, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I think that it is important that we
30
let the
seconds.
Virginians know how we're going to beat Mark Warner. That is something that each of us, all of us are great candidates up here, but that is the important thing to understand is that we have a plan to beat Mark Warner. And that is, I believe, for all of us, that is what we have to talk to the voters for. And so I would just push back a little bit on that because that's somewhat of a basic question that we have to figure out.
Kim? Well, let's go back to Bert because he discussed you particularly without naming you, but I think he was directed at you. Do you have a response?
Could you repeat
Do you have a
that?
response? David sort of referenced you without naming you, but referenced you. If you would like 30
Well,
seconds to respond.
Well, I'll stick with my answer. You don't want to necessarily publicly disclose it. So I believe that I am the favorite in this race to win the nomination. And I believe Mark Warner knows that. We can't assume that he doesn't. So why kind of hang myself out there right now? I'm willing to have private discussions but I did bring up the point of leadership. He failed to exercise leadership while he was the head of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He knew what Schiff was saying was a lie. Schiff had immunity because he did it in his position as a congressman. How could Mark Warner let our country go through that without saying one word or even pulling Schiff to the side and say, you need to stop that?
Okay.
So it's a failure of leadership.
Kim, the gentleman have had a conversation. Would you like to join it on that? Do you have anything else to add?
Again, I stick to the point, it's going to come down to votes, and we need you all to get out and vote. We need you to really encourage and engage your friends, your families, to get out and vote. And I'm actually doing that, and I'm having Democrats, even in Northern Virginia, tell me, as recent as Sunday, that they actually went out and voted for me in the primary because I'm a common sense candidate, and they know I can beat Mark Warner.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. We're gonna dive into the issues. First section is government debt and entitlements. This goes to David, Kim, and then Bert. All of you have served in the federal government, albeit in the executive branch, and have an intimate working knowledge of the federal government. About that, I am sure you have strongly held opinions. You now seek a position in the legislative branch. Have both parties in Congress given too much authority to the president? If so, what would you do to change that? If not, why are you applying for the job? David?
So we have currently we have a $38 trillion debt. That is too much for us to bear. And so that is number one, that we have to get that down. And the way that we do that is we go after these programs, the fraud, abuse, and waste, where there's hundreds of billions of dollars that are being wasted of taxpayers' money. So that is the first thing. The second thing is foreign aid that is going out of our country to other countries that not necessarily have our values. And so we have to make sure that we're taking a look at that and cutting that so that we can get the taxpayers the resources that they need in order to run their families, their households. And so that is what we're going to do.
Okay, Kim.
I spent 33 years in federal service. Washington is broken. I know how to fix it. And that comes to going after the fraud and inefficiencies that are just all over the federal government and in our budget. I actually hold programs accountable, and that's how I get things done, and that's how I actually wrote the legislation to save you taxpayers over $1 billion when I worked for the White House. And I will continue to do that. I want to be Virginia's CPA. I want to be the one that holds all programs in our budget accountable, unlike what's happening now. We send so many elected officials to Washington that know how to spend the money, but don't know how to follow it. I know how to follow it. That's what I did in federal government. That's why I got results. And that's how I plan on reducing the national debt. Any program that's not operating effectively, let's take that money and put it towards the national debt and the interest to bring down that national debt for us.
Bert? So, Chris, my understanding was you were asking if the legislative branch has ceded too much power to the president. My answer is not to this president. I think this president is doing the right thing. I think we need a strong executive. Yes, they cede too much power to Democrat presidents given what they've done with the executive orders that they've issued. So I actually wrote Donald Trump's foreign policy doctrine when he was candidate Trump in 2016. He read it in front of me. He personally approved it. He said he loved it. He approved me to get it published. As you might guess, the New York Times, which was his biggest critic on not having a coherent national security or foreign policy doctrine, refused to print the candidate's own foreign policy. So basically, the thesis was the president is a fiduciary for U.S. taxpayer dollars. He has to make sure that every dollar that the United States spends was like somebody spending it out of their own pocket. And so as a businessman, he promised to be a steward. I think he's doing a great job. He's cutting back on all the corruption and all the foreign policy, all the foreign aid expenditures that are not helping the American taxpaying citizens. And I support him fully on that.
Okay. Two of you answered or discussed the federal debt, specifically going to Kim. During this campaign, the federal debt is expected to cross $40 trillion by Labor Day. Most candidates say they care about fiscal responsibility, but the debt keeps rising under both parties. What specific spending cuts, entitlement reforms, tax changes, or budget process reforms would you support to change the trajectory? And what politically difficult trade-off are you willing to defend to Virginia voters? Kim Farrington.
Well, as I mentioned, I have a plan for bringing down the national debt. We will not have, under my watch, in holding programs accountable, situations where fraudsters like the Smalley daycare centers are taking your money, and then we keep raising taxes to cover that. I want to close the loopholes through legislation to keep those fraudsters from taking your money and finding those inefficiencies and writing the legislation to fix that. That will save taxpayer dollars. That's how we reduce the national debt. By taking that money, as I mentioned, putting those inefficient programs, taking that money from those programs and putting it towards the interest that we're paying on our national debt, that will reduce the national debt. I also want to write legislation to support small businesses that make up 99.6% of all Virginia businesses. Let's help them thrive, let's help them grow, expand the tax base, and bring your taxes down across the Commonwealth.
Bert?
So I'm the only candidate up here who's actually served in the U.S. Senate. I was a 3-star equivalent, called a professional staff member. I know how that institution works. I can hit the ground running. It's a crying shame that today our interest payments on the debt exceeds our defense spending. Virginia is the largest recipient of U.S. defense spending of any state in the nation per capita. I will be the highest ranking military officer in the U.S. Senate and the most highly decorated combat veteran in the Senate. So I'll have an outsized amount of influence on how we spend our national security dollars, whether they're at home or abroad. Most of our spending, by the way, is entitlement spending, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. But out of the spending that is not entitlement is called the discretionary part of the budget. The defense part is by far the largest part. So I will have a lot of influence on how we spend our dollars, and I want to make sure that we spend it in a way that's the most effective. And a lot of that will come to Virginia because we have the critical mass of capabilities here that we need to take care of our national security. Also, I would go after all the corruption. I think if we eliminate corruption, we would eliminate a lot of our deficit. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, so the big question is, how do we get the money back to taxpayers? And so that is why we are looking to cut in government spending. And so we've been traveling all around Virginia, hearing the issues of Virginians. And one, the cost of living is insurmountable for them. And so that is what we're going to look at. That is why we're talking about how we're going to cut. The first thing is, once again, the fraud, waste, and abuse. We have to follow the money and make sure that we are cutting that. The second thing is we have to make sure that we are going after that foreign aid. We have to cut the foreign aid for those that are not, that don't value what we want to do as a country. And then the third is, like I said, there's the improper payments to Medicaid and other programs. Just like the Leering Center. So these are things that we have to get under control, and quickly.
Thank you. To Bert Mizusawa, will you commit to voting against any budget, tax bill, or spending package that increases the deficit without a credible long-term offset?
Yes, I would. But sometimes when that question is posed to me, I ask the question, what happens if a nuclear round hits our military operational forces in the Hampton Roads area? Would we agree to have an increase in order to restore our ability to defend ourselves? And I think everybody would agree here, yes. But absent a cataclysmic circumstance like this, I would. I'm a deficit hawk. I think we have to look at new ways to do it. Many of you probably are not economists here, but we have had an exorbitant privilege by having the dollar as the global reserve currency, which allows us, the only one among all the nations, to just print more money in order to pay our debts. That era is coming to an end, and we just went off the petrodollar standard in 2024. What this means is we need to change the way we do business, and we have to change it soon. Otherwise, we're going to be caught in a circumstance that we'll never be able to work our way out of.
David Williams.
Yeah, so like I said, if we balance the budget and cut the necessary taxes, the key is making sure we get the relief to the American people. And so that is by far what we're looking at doing. And so whether that's extending the child tax cuts that Trump has and increasing that, and then also on Social Security, we shouldn't be taxing people on their Social Security. They've already paid their debt, and that is a benefit for them. And then also we have to make sure that, like, tax on tips, and no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. We need to extend that and make that permanent. President Trump is doing an amazing job trying to get the taxes down, and we need to support that.
Kim?
I am the only candidate up here that has already signed a pledge to not raise income taxes, because I don't think we need to raise income taxes. We need to, again, focus on the budget process, make sure that every line item in the budget is a reasonable, accurate estimate of what's needed in the budget, and then hold those programs accountable, create those metrics, those are performance measures. And when we take the money away from programs that are not operating effectively, we won't have to raise income taxes. We can just, again, take that money back from those inefficient and fraudulent programs, go after the $236 billion that I already know exists in federal government in fraud, waste, and inefficiencies, and let's bring taxes down, and again, our national debt down, that way versus raising taxes. And again, I already signed a pledge not to do that.
Kim, 31 years ago, the Senate came up just one vote short in passing the balanced budget amendment. Would you vote for it if elected?
And that again goes back to my bailiwick. We've got to balance the budget. When I retired as the Chief Financial Officer for the First Responder Network Authority, a $100 billion program, I balanced the budget, and there's no reason why we can't do it in Washington, especially under my watch. I, again, made sure every line item in the budget was at an accurate estimate. I didn't allow cushions. I wanted objectivity to where we're spending the money and what the outcome was going to be, and I held those programs accountable. And every year I was the Chief Financial Officer for this $100 billion program. I never spent over what I had budgeted, and I'm proud of that. And I also made sure that the $1 trillion program for federal retirees that I oversaw, I made sure that $1 trillion program was also budgeted down to the penny every day. I want to be Virginia's CPA.
Bert? So I have to correct something that Kim said. I signed the no increased taxes pledge with Grover Norquist in 2010, just to make that clear. 2010, that was 16 years ago. So
You still hold to that?
it's a pledge, yes.
Okay, just
yes.
making sure.
And
'cause
it's essentially the same.
sometimes
Okay,
it gets,
yes, it's still out
for
there.
the press and the audience who might not.
I've signed a lot of things, but I do remember
Gotcha,
that
gotcha.
one in my time. So we all want a balanced budget. Did they pass it last time? And the question is, did it work? We have been doing and saying a lot of things over the decades, but none of it works. That's one of the reasons I decided that I was going to throw my full support behind somebody who would be a disruptive leader in Washington. That was Donald Trump. We needed somebody with a businessman sense. As I mentioned, I wrote his foreign policy platform, which included taking care of U.S. taxpayer dollars. So I believe that we need to have a balanced budget. The last time we had it was in the 1990s. Sometimes the pledges that the senators sign are not worth the paper it's written on. So I want to find out what didn't work about it and how we can fix it.
David, balanced budget amendment.
Yeah, so I would pledge not to increase taxes or the income tax. In fact, I would go a step further and say we need to support President Trump because he has been talking about decreasing the income tax, and so that's one thing we need to all to look at. The other thing is the standard deduction. We should be able to increase that to $20,000 for single and then $50,000 for joint. And that's basically saying how much taxes that you're going to pay as a single or as joint. So as Virginians, we need more money in our pockets. That is the affordability issue. Right now you have Abigail Spanberger raising the taxes 51 different times. And so when we look at what it is that Virginians need, it's that tax relief. And so that is what I am going to be a proponent for, and that is my promise to you.
This year, Virginia saw a statewide election that attempted to change the state constitution for mid-decade re-gerrymander of the Commonwealth's congressional districts. Democrats said it was necessary given the same behavior in other states. This goes to Bert first. Should gerrymandering be banned via a constitutional amendment that once and for all does away with that practice in all of the states?
So if I understood you correctly, should gerrymandering be banned? I don't think anybody can actually come up with a definition of gerrymandering. Everybody agrees that when we have our every 10-year census, that is designed to apportion the congressional representation among the states. This is what I believe. I think only U.S. citizens should be counted in the census. I should just leave it at that, but I will tell you, Right now, they were fighting this in 2017. Wilbur Ross was the Secretary of Commerce, and the Census Bureau is part of that. Texas and a lot of these other states were counting illegal aliens that were coming in, and you had 5 judges that backed up that practice. They were all Democrat-appointed judges. So one of my pledges to you, I'm the only attorney here on the stage, and I surprise people when I say I would seek to be on the Senate Judiciary Committee to make sure we get judges that enforce the law that are in America's best interest. Thank you.
David?
So the Democrats are trying to steal your voice. They wanted to make it 10-to-1 representation on the gerrymandering, the redistricting. Virginia's came out and they fought against that. And so what we need to do is we need to continue, because now what they're doing is they are bringing these back up, the deceptive ballot initiatives. They're bringing these back up in a different way. And so what we need to do is make sure that we do not allow them to do that. And we also need to make sure that we support Save American Act. And that is going to keep our integrity, our voting integrity clear. And that is the reason why America is the greatest country, is because of the integrity, the voter integrity. And so if we lose that, then we lose our nation. And so we need to be fighting and making sure that we talk to the senators so that they pass that.
Kim?
I, too, believe that this gerrymandering or redistricting was unacceptable. How dare Democrats try to change the game in the middle of the game when we have rules and laws on how to run this country? And I also agree that we need to make sure that we do not count illegal aliens in our counts. We need to have integrity around our voting system, around our census. And I am so proud of all of you who got out to vote no, despite the archaic and very confusing language that was in that you got out and voted no, and look how many people voted no. So thank you for standing up for your country and Virginia.
Because David mentioned the SAVE Act, and we've had several questions come in online, I'm going to ask very briefly in the same order we just had. If you support the SAVE Act, and if you were in the Senate, would you vote for it? Bert?
First, I have to clarify, it's called the Save America Act. And number one, yes, and I do want to make a clarification. The Save America Act is not the same thing as the redistricting issue. One of them—
No, it's not.
Yeah, they're not the same thing, to clarify. Yes, I would actually ask John Thune to change the Senate rules, get rid of the filibuster. The Save America Act is so essential for our democracy. We need to get that through, and then if he can change the rules back, fine. But let's get that through. Let's get all the black and white issues passed. And so I'm a big proponent of doing that.
David?
Yeah,
You mentioned it briefly.
absolutely. That we have to support that. Like I mentioned, that this is the crossroads that we face here in America. That is why President Trump has been a top priority for him to make sure that he pushes that through. And if you look at where our country is going and how they are trying to bring socialist type ideology into what we are in America, that should scare you. And that should cause you to get out and make sure that we get people out to vote, because they're not playing with the rules anymore. Why wouldn't you need your ID to go to vote? Why wouldn't you need to show that you're an American citizen? So ask yourself these things and then understand what we are up against right now, because they're not making policies. What they are looking at doing is, like I said, changing the culture, changing the fabric of America, and we cannot let that happen.
Thank you. Kim, the Save America Act, thank you for the correction, General.
I've seen it both ways. Whether you call it the Save America Act or the SAVE Act, it is so important to us that we get it passed. And I'm concerned why it's taking so long to get it passed, considering it's voter data integrity that we're talking about here, the fundamental foundation of this country. And so I would definitely vote for it. And what I would also recommend is since it is having trouble getting through and getting passed, let's break it down and let's have Congress and the Senate start focusing on the different aspects of the SAVE Act, Save America Act, so we can start to make progress towards that voter integrity that we need in this country that we all know exists. We even have the New York City asking for 2 IDs to just be a snow, to clear the snow on the streets. We should have that across America. Voter ID, let's vote for Save America Act and SAVE Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Returning to our David, Kim, and then Bert schedule here. Each of you spent your career in the executive branch, and Northern Virginia has one of the highest concentrations of federal employees in the country. After this year's reductions in force, how do you think about the right size of federal government, and what responsibility, if any, do you feel toward Virginians whose jobs were eliminated? David?
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned it before. We have to make sure that we make these smart cuts. And under President Trump, we were able to do that. So that's saving taxpayers money. However, I do understand that a number of individuals lost their jobs. And so we have to have empathy for them, or sympathy. And so that means to get the training and get them the jobs that they need. There are a number of jobs in Northern Virginia and around Virginia. And so we have to make sure that those individuals, get back on their feet and have jobs. But the other thing is that where Warner is going to be vulnerable is because he's the one that actually voted to shut down the government, which caused this kind of chain reaction over 13 times. And so that was the historical shutdown of America. And that caused us millions and billions of dollars. And so that's what we have to make sure we hold him accountable in November.
Kim?
Yes, we did clear a lot of jobs out of the federal government. President Trump did. But that was because we had some employees that I remember working with that slept on the job, and that's unacceptable. If you were in any job or an owner or a manager, would you really pay somebody to sleep on the job? So we did clear some government employees, which is why I want to do 2 things. One, I want to focus on helping those employees that no longer work for the government. A lot of them, through my listening tour, are starting their own small businesses, which is why I want to help small businesses thrive and grow, create more new jobs, and help make truly Virginia more affordable. And I think it's also important, with my expertise in federal government for the last 33 years, I want to improve the systems and processes for the government employees that currently are working for the government, because we can make their job easier and save you taxpayer dollars.
Bert? Yep. If there's anybody who knows about the importance of jobs, it's President Trump. And he's demonstrated that over and over and over again, trying to reshore a lot of our manufacturing capabilities that we've outsourced to countries that we cannot depend on. If there's anybody who knows about the importance of a strong military in Hampton Roads and other areas around the nation, it's me. And President Trump and candidate Trump before him listened to my advice where we needed it. Not all defense spending is as productive. And I will tell you, there's something more important than jobs, and that's productivity for our country and for the U.S. taxpaying public. And so I mentioned that defense spending is the largest share of our discretionary budget. President Trump has listened to me. He's changed his mind because of me. So I will have an outsized amount of influence on how our dollars are spent. So nobody wants their taxpayer dollars to be wasted. But we all want to have jobs. I will work with him to make not only more jobs, especially for Virginia, to make those the money that we spend in those jobs productive. And I've spent time all over the federal government, and there's so much waste. And the thing that drove me to President Trump is I was counter-corruption, in charge of counter-corruption in Afghanistan. We were wasting so much American blood and treasure there. I couldn't take it anymore. I took on the Obama White House, appeared on the front page of the Washington Times. It's never good for a military career to take on the president, but I thought it was worthwhile. Thank you.
So I just recently, and some of you saw my photo, just met with President Trump, and I want to make sure that we are representing our relationships the correct way. So President Trump asked me who else was running in this Senate race, and of course, I'm sorry I didn't tell him about you all because that's your jobs. But I just want to make sure, because that's important. We need to get that national attention. And that is when he told me. He said, that is, you all in Virginia, you need to make some noise and win this election. And so when we talk about this, I want to make sure that we are bringing it into perspective of who's actually out there fighting for you, Virginia, and trying to get that national attention here in Virginia. And I'm doing it every day.
We're going to continue in the same order, if we may, on Social Security, since it's already been brought up. So consider it more of a follow-up. That was when you talked about debt and entitlements. More than 1.5 million Virginians rely on Social Security, and by 2032, the final year of your term in the United States Senate, the program is projected to be insolvent, resulting in a mandatory 22% benefit cut. What is your plan to save Social Security, prevent the abrupt benefit cut, and shore up the program for current and future generations? Keeping this in mind, eliminating the income cap, investing in Social Security in the private market, economic growth estimates, and waste, fraud, and abuse do not get us there. In your term of office, this essential program to 1.5 million Virginians is going to be insolvent. What is your plan, Kim?
So my plan, being a CPA and working for the government and monitoring and overseeing trust funds, the trust fund will become insolvent, but there will still be, in 2032, 78% of Social Security that will still be there. So when you hear the Democrats say that Social Security is going to go bankrupt, that really is not an accurate statement. And so what I plan on doing is similar to the other funds that I have monitored and kept my eye on. I plan to do the same with that reserve fund. Let's take the extra funds that we do find in that fraud and in those inefficient programs, and also let's write legislation to put a percentage each year towards that revolving fund that is going to make up that additional percentage to fully maintain that Social Security fund. Let's do that, and we can do it by 2032 if we start this November.
Bert? Unlike Medicaid, food stamps, and other entitlements, Social Security is an earned entitlement. There will be no Social Security cuts under my watch. The people who have paid into it have earned that, and we should not change that. We should stick with our commitment. And at this point, President Trump has actually helped people not pay tax on Social Security. I don't want to get into all the details, but he got what he could because we had to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that extended the Tax Cut and Jobs Act through the reconciliation procedure, which allowed it to pass with a simple majority. People don't realize how important that was because they extended something that happened in 2017. But if it weren't for that, we would have reverted back to the Tax Reform Act of 1986, which would have been a huge increase. So I will not stand by and watch any Social Security cuts to people who are entitled it. And we've been talking about the Social Security trust fund going bankrupt since at least the 1980s, if not the 1970s. There are ways around it. One way around it is we have the dollar as a reserve currency. We can actually print more money. I think we need to do what we need to do to follow through on our entitlement to our elders. Thank you.
David.
Yeah, so I will get into the details, and we don't need to print more money because that will cause more inflation and get us where we are where we were during the Biden administration. But what we do need to do is, as Bert said, that if you paid into Social Security, that is your benefit, that is your right. We must make sure that that continues and that it sustains. Now, about the solvency, we have to make sure that we keep it solvent, correct? And the way that we do that is that you go and you look at the younger generation and you start there to increase the retirement age gradually, and that will allow for us to stay solvent in Social Security. And so that is a detailed plan of how it's going to work, and it will work if we implement it.
Thank you. Moving to veterans issues for Bert. Virginia has one of the largest veteran populations of any state, including people still serving today. What specific reforms would you push to fix wait times and care quality at the VA? Bert.
Yep. First of all, I think our nation owes a debt of gratitude to our veterans. Can all the veterans in the crowd please stand up? Please stand up. Thank you. Thank you for your service. So I completely empathize with the veterans. I spent 41 years in uniform, 4 combat tours. I've lost soldiers. My body's taken a beating. I was a paratrooper. For those of you who've been jumping out of airplanes, perfectly good airplanes, you realize how much wear and tear there is on your body. I'm also a VA accredited attorney. I've been helping our disabled veterans for free, help them get the disability benefits they've earned. I think Doug Collins, and I was also a senior executive at the VA. I think Doug Collins, our secretary there, has been doing a great job. He's been communicating very well. They are speeding up the claims process, and I'm doing everything I can to help our veterans because I think they deserve every benefit that they've earned. Thank you.
Yeah, so the VA is getting better under President Trump. The wait times are down. However, we have to continue with the progress there. So making sure that veterans can get in on time. Healthcare is also a big issue where as a Marine officer, there were several Marines that unfortunately took their lives in suicide because they were unable to readjust when they got back from a war zone. And so we have to be able to support our military when it comes to health care, and then also, or mental care, and then also we have to make sure that we're outsourcing some of that medical care for them, because with that wait time, that's for VA, but if we're able to let them go to their local doctors, especially here in this area, then they will be able to make sure that they get the care that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Throughout my tour, my 50,000-mile tour of the Commonwealth, that is one issue I've heard across the Commonwealth, and that is veterans' needs and concerns, which is why I'm going to, being an innovator, think outside the box. So many issues I hear are that it takes 3.5 hours to drive to a doctor. The wait times are too long. My approach that I'd like to consider is I want to create a debit card for all veterans and their families so that they can use that card to go to whichever doctor they want, get whatever type of help they want. And in one example, disabled veterans in Wise County have supported me, and they want scooters that can actually help them get up the hills because the scooter that they're given right now isn't working for them. So that's how I want to address the issues with veterans and the wait times. With that, you can choose how long you want to wait. And I also heard from veterans about the age limits put on their children when they graduate from school. So I also want to raise that as well to age 26, like all the commercial health care is. And let's look out for the veterans. They deserve to be looked out for. And I'm standing for military veterans, first responders, and their families.
Thank you. Before we move on, I want to thank you all individually for your service to the nation, as well as the spouses who serve our nation as well through their spouses. Thank you all very much. They are all, please, thank you. Moving on to the next section, economy, energy, and affordability. Dwayne Yancey of Cardinal News recently highlighted findings from Virginia's Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, showing that data center tax incentives generate some of the strongest economic returns of any incentive program in the Commonwealth. At the same time, data centers are increasingly viewed as critical infrastructure in the race to lead in artificial intelligence and advanced technologies. How should policymakers balance local community concerns with economic, technological, and national competitiveness benefits these projects can provide? David?
Yeah, so we have to make sure that Virginians are not footing the bill for these data centers. That's number one. So it increases the water supply, and it also energy. Your energy prices are going up, right? And so what we have to do, because we also have to balance that with these data centers are going to help us to get revenue, we have to make sure that we're also on the cutting edge of technology. And so how do we balance that? We make sure that each of these data centers, whether they're here in the 6th district or down in the 9th, that they're self-sustainable and that they don't pull from your energy, they don't pull from your water, and that they allow you to make sure that your bills don't go up. And so in order to do that, we need to have somebody in DC that's looking out for the 6th district, that's looking out for the 9th district to make sure that your issues are represented.
Thank you. Kim?
I have been formally trained by Microsoft, Google, and the Ford Foundation in artificial intelligence, and I hold an executive leadership certificate for that. And I also work next to the United States Chief Information Officer in doing data center consolidations for the federal government. And what I see now is a lot of eyesores, a lot of large data centers that residents do not want. We need data centers for national security concerns. And how many have an iPhone in here or a smartphone? We need AI and data centers to keep using our cell phones the way we're using them. But we need a good approach. My way to address it is let's continue to build data centers, but let's do it more efficiently. Let's use micronuclear reactors to actually provide the energy for these data centers. Micronuclear reactors have been used on Navy ships since 1971. And that way, you will not have to pay for their data or their energy usage as residents.
Thank you.
Bert? I think the local communities should decide what's in their best interest, not Richmond or Washington, D.C., and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Second question on data centers goes to Kim first. Virginia's data center boom is straining the electric grid. Several of you have mentioned that. And utilities have warned of capacity constraints later this decade. Where do you stand on nuclear, natural gas, and renewables as the path to keeping the lights on and power affordable? And would you support overriding local opposition to build that capacity out?
Again, it goes back to the micronuclear reactors that we have been using in our national security for decades. Let's use those micronuclear reactors and let's make sure they're safe, which I have already feel that they are from what I know about them, but there is a test that's going on right now with micronuclear reactors in Lynchburg. So let's see how that test goes, what the results are. I expect they're going to be favorable. And then again, we won't have to worry about energy usage being passed on to residents of those communities. And I think it's important that if we use this approach, then my bottom line, I want to make sure that your lights don't flicker and they come on when you flip the button, flip your switch. And this is my approach to making that happen so you don't have to worry about, will my lights come on when I want them to come on?
I think we should have a comprehensive approach to our energy needs. It's one of the biggest components of the affordability issue. So I'm talking nuclear, I'm talking about fossil fuels, I'm talking about renewables. America is blessed with some great resources. We should take advantage of them. I'm a big proponent of the small modular nuclear reactors. It's not your father's nuclear reactor or grandfather's nuclear reactor. The left has successfully stopped any new nuclear starts in this nation for decades, and it's crazy. Nuclear is cheaper, it's safer, it's cleaner, and it's more reliable. And that's been proven technology. So once again, I mentioned, I think the local communities should decide what's in their best interest. So I will say that we do need more and better, cheaper energy for Americans, but I do not want to have it shoved down the throats of our local communities unless they think it's in their best interest. So I'm an advocate for doing everything we can to bring down energy prices and self-sufficiency in America because it's a national security imperative. Thank you.
David?
Well, I'm going to say like President Trump, drill, baby, drill. That's what we need to do. We need to get out there. We need to make sure that we expand our domestic energy production, and we can do that from natural gas and oil. We have plenty of areas and locations here that we can do that in. We also need to expand our nuclear reactions and production as well, so that we can do that naturally. And then we also have to end these crazy regulations that you all, I'm sure, are seeing here in your farms and EPA and all of these regulations that they are putting on Americans. And so once we do that, we're going to be able to get you all the energy relief that you need.
Okay. Final question on data centers, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break, okay? That's the program we have set up. We're going to go one more question on data centers and then a break, okay? Data centers, AI chips, and the defense industrial base all run through supply chains that increasingly touch China. What should the U.S. do to reduce dependence on Chinese manufacturing and technology, and are you willing to accept higher short-term costs for American consumers to get there? Bert?
Yes, I've already mentioned self-sufficiency, and I think Trump's on the right track. We need to not rely on any foreign source of our critical needs. That includes rare earth minerals. That includes anything that relates to our energy, our batteries, our clean water. And so when I was appointed to the CIA by President Trump, that was one of my main focuses on emerging technologies. So America needs to do whatever it can to not rely on anybody else for their energy needs or any other needs. The data centers, China plays a big role in that. I will tell you that AI is coming. They've been talking about AI coming since the 1980s. Well, now it's accelerating. They've moved from the large language modules to something called agentic artificial intelligence, where they can be autonomous. And it's almost like the difference between when I was a U.S. soldier prepared to fight the Soviets, we were told what the ultimate mission was, and we were able to improvise however we needed to. The Soviets could only do the next few hours of planning. So it's coming, folks, and I wouldn't be serving you well if I didn't tell you it's coming, so we need to prepare for it, and I will do everything I can to help you prepare for that. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Yes, and that is the reason why we have to do it, because of our competition abroad. As serving 30 years in national security, I know what's coming. And so I will be able to start on day one in the Senate to make sure that Virginia is taken care of and represented well. As far as the data centers, that train has left the station. But now what we have to do is make sure that every Virginian here, especially in the 6th District, is taken care of, is represented. And that is what I've been doing. I've been showing up. I've been going around. This is, in the 6th District, this is where I gave my first speech when after I announced. I've been down to Southwest Virginia. So I'm hearing the issues and making sure that we're able to discuss them and make sure that you all are represented in a way in D.C. so that you don't get left behind and you don't get forgotten.
Thank you. Kim?
This isn't an issue that's coming up. It's already here. In fact, I've already been part of that issue and ways of fixing it. Being the Chief Financial Officer for the FirstNet Authority, we actually had, which is a telecommunications network dedicated to our first responders. We already had this issue because we were using Chinese switches, our vendors were using Chinese switches that if in any instant, China could turn those switches off and our whole telecommunications critical infrastructure could have gone down. But we found it, we fixed it. And that's what I'm used to doing, finding inefficiencies, finding critical issues, especially to our national security and to our first responders, protecting our lives and our communities, and getting results to make it happen so we are a more secure country. And that's what I plan on doing as your next U.S. Senator.
Thank you, Kim. We're now going to take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, our issue will be affordability. Yeah, that's my purview.
Where's the website that you could see this on?
It's Facebook, Family Foundation. Thank you all. Shh. Please take our seats. Thank you. Before we get going again, I'd like to welcome elected officials who have joined us here today. Chris Runyon of the 35th House District. George Price, Augusta County Commissioner of Revenue. Dave Bourne, Augusta County Treasurer. Dewey Ritchie, Rockingham County Board of Supervisors. Mike Lawson, Augusta County School Board. And Augusta County Board of Supervisors, Stephen Greps. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to thank Carolyn Bragg. I did not see Carolyn. Where is she? My apologies. Let's give her a nice round of applause since she didn't get recognized. Carolyn Bragg. Stand up, Carolyn. Come on. That's my mistake. Where is she? There she is. All right. We always miss one or two. I was usually the one or two. I'd also like to thank the audience for your participation and excellent behavior throughout. We don't get that very often in today's politics. Getting back to the program here on affordability, what is termed the broken bargain. Young adults increasingly say the system in America is not working for them. I hear it often from our 4 children. That if they get educated, work hard, follow the rules, and avoid trouble, they may not be able to afford a home, raise a family, pay off debt, or build the kind of life their parents had. Beginning with Mr. Williams, What do you believe is broken in that bargain, and what is one specific thing you would do, just one specific thing you would do as a U.S. Senator to restore upward mobility for young Virginians? 1 minute.
Yes. So it goes back to, as a fiscal conservative, it goes back to taxes. It goes back to taxes. As you said correctly, the youth are really the ones that are suffering. Right there in Northern Virginia, most of them can't afford to live in Northern Virginia, and I think that's the issue here as well. They're having to move out because of high housing prices that are rising. And so what we have to do is, once again, it goes back to cutting the out-of-control spending that's coming out of Richmond, 51 different tax cuts or tax hikes on everything across the board. And so we have to get those taxes down so that these young folks have a little bit more money in their pockets. And then also at the federal level, we can look at extending and making permanent those the child tax cuts. And that's going to be important. That's going to help relieve a little bit of stress on the youth.
Thank you. Kim?
I was very fortunate in that I was able to buy my first house when I was much younger than what the current average age is of around 40. And I think it's important that we really look out for those first-time home buyers. And I think an easy fix is to make sure that we don't allow these large volume corporations to buy a whole bunch of houses, and then they raise, because they get the volume discount, and then they raise the taxes or the price of the homes, and that outpaces the amount of money that these first-time home buyers have to be able to afford that first home. So if we don't allow the volume discount and we don't allow these big box companies, big corporations to sell those houses at such a profit, we can get more young generations into their first home and all residents into their first home sooner.
Thank you. Bert?
Yeah, so the question, as I understand it, was what specifically would we do as your senator to help with the upward mobility of our younger generations because of the affordability issues? First of all, everybody has their own affordability problems. It depends on what your personal expenses are. And they're different for the younger generations and the older generations. But one thing that is common is housing. And one thing specific that I would do is I would basically increase the capital gain exclusion on a sale of a principal residence, because my generation has basically bought a lot of real estate, and we are limited to a $250,000 capital gain exclusion if you're single, $500,000 if you're $500,000 if you're married. But that was the amount set back in the 90s, and it has not been indexed to inflation. If we index to inflation, we would double the exclusion. I think we'd have a lot more of the older generation selling their homes, and it would decrease the prices and make housing much more available for our younger generations. And that would take care of the largest expense, so that's one specific thing that I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on affordability, both political parties in the United States in the last 2 years have run campaigns acknowledging that inflation and affordability is a problem, if not the #1 problem. And arguably, both parties have made it worse. Republicans at the national level with tariffs and other Middle Eastern wars' impact on oil prices, and Democrats at the state level with their own recent policy decisions on energy. What policies do you support and oppose to make life more affordable for all Virginians? Kim?
Well, my approach to making Virginia affordable for all Virginians is to focus on job growth. As I mentioned, there are 99.6% of all Virginia businesses that are small businesses. Let's help them thrive. Let's help them create jobs that will expand that tax base and truly make Virginia more affordable. At the same time, being an inventor and a patent holder, when I was looking for a manufacturer in Virginia, I could not find one. I did not go overseas. My product is made in the USA, but I had to go to Maryland to get that manufacturer to manufacture my product, which is why I want to also, again, incentivize manufacturers to come to Virginia using those vacant buildings we have in Virginia, help them create jobs, require them to hire permanent Virginia residents, expand that tax base, and again, make Virginia more affordable.
Bert, we can all agree that jobs are important. And I want to make sure that we helped increase the job opportunities, but also in the right areas. We need to help our trade schools, some of our basic skills, because the one scary thing about AI that I've learned is this new agentic capability, they say, can basically supplant all of the economically profitable service sector jobs. So we need to get back to the basics and train people in some of the mechanical skills. The other issue I would take care of is the COLA. The cost of living allowance today does not reflect the true cost of inflation and living, especially for our seniors. So right now, it's based upon wage earners, but the elderly have different costs, and one of them is medical in addition to housing. So I would basically support a bill that the COLA must reflect the true cost of inflation and not the artificial one that they use that always underestimates what our actual costs are going to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. David?
So the first thing we have to do is cut the out-of-control spending, because that is what causes the inflation to go up. The second thing is we have to let the economy, get out the way and let the economy do what the economy does. And so that's with all the regulations that you all see, especially here in the 6, where they're regulating your water and your the agriculture, where you can't have certain equipment, and things that are just basic fundamental rights that you all have that they are trying to regulate. And so when we're able to get out of the way and let you all do what you need to do to keep your farmlands and your businesses prospering, that's one thing that I will do, is just get government out of your way. And then the last thing is we have to make sure that we train up the youth to come and get some, get in some of these agriculture jobs. And so we have to encourage that as well because of that labor shortage.
Thank you. Moving to healthcare, the Affordable Care Act premiums have risen sharply. Going to Bert. The Affordable Care Act premiums have risen sharply, and prescription drug costs remain a top complaint from Virginia families. What specifically would you do to bring down healthcare costs without stripping protections for people with pre-existing conditions? 1 minute. Bert.
Well, the cost of health care has risen in a way that's not justifiable whatsoever. I think that President Trump has done what he can and will continue to do more to help lower health care costs. In the end, capitalism is the greatest system for economic growth that's ever been invented. It's made us the greatest country in the world, and I think we need more competition in our health care and in our pharmaceuticals and in our insurance. So I will do what I can in order to make the medical care industry more competitive, and that should lower costs, and it will also provide more options for our veterans, our seniors, our youngsters. And we will continue to be on the leading edge of the medical profession here in our country, but we also want to make it more affordable. Thank you.
David?
Once again, get out of the way. Government has to get out of the way, less government, so that the healthcare can strive. The first thing is we have to let the people choose their own plans. We shouldn't be determining which plans that they need to be on. The second thing is that we let the healthcare industries compete for your business. We can't do that if we're supplementing and we're giving these tax hikes or tax credits to these big businesses. And then the last is that we have to make sure that you all have the health facilities that you need here in these rural areas, so that you don't have to travel 2 hours just to get health care.
Kim?
Healthcare is so important, and it impacts all of us. And throughout my listening tour across the Commonwealth, I've heard from pharmacists, especially those small business pharmacies, those compound pharmacies, And one of the things that I'm going to focus on specifically is working with the PBMs, or the middlemen who actually help with the distribution and really raise the cost of the pharmaceuticals in this country. So I'm looking at that not only for all Virginians and all Americans, but especially as part of my 8-step plan for protecting and supporting our elderly and senior citizens, because they need to be able to afford their medication. And by working with these PBMs, finding that transparency into the costs, we can make healthcare and the pharmaceutical and your medicine more affordable.
And Bert. Did we get Bert already? No? Did we get you? You answered first?
Excuse me?
You answered first correctly. Okay, just
I
making
did.
sure we get the rotation correct. Thank you. During this year's World Cup, hosted mainly in the United States, Americans have been delighted to see that many of our foreign guests are amazed at what a great country we actually have.
Shocking.
Go ahead. The fact that we have to applaud that is just stunning to me, right? In fact, they are openly praising us not only for our kindness, our generosity, our hospitality, and the beauty of our country. They love our free refills, our free chips and salsa, and free bread at restaurants. So much of what we take for granted every day. It's been a wonderful mirror for America. Two-part question. Do you support continuing to offer free refills, chips, salsa, and bread? And more importantly, given the deep and intense divisions we have politically, what specifically will you do in the U.S. Senate to continue to build this goodwill here at home and abroad? Beginning with David.
Yeah, so for me, I spent a lot of time overseas, and when I would come back, what you said is America is exceptional. And many people don't realize that until you go away and then you come back. But we in here, we know that, and so we will continue to try to get the word out to as many people as we can. In order to make sure that we are staying, or that we're bringing in as many people as we can. So that is the key, and that was one of the earlier questions: is how do we gain that independent vote? Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, Virginia is no longer red, and all of us have really good accolades up here. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, how are we going to start winning elections? How are we going to get those independents? But making sure that they stay under those conservative values and that we don't waffle and become a rhino.
Kim?
I will fully support free refills, and I will also work with the manufacturers to make sure that we can get ranch dressing so that anyone coming to America can take those ranch dressing packages home instead of the DHS secretary coming on the news telling them not to take it. But when it comes to goodwill across the world, I'm already working on that. I've already been reaching out and talking to and enjoying conversations with ambassadors from Liechtenstein to Egypt to South Sudan, and even the ambassador of Eritrea. So I am all for keeping that goodwill, maintaining those relationships around the world. And I think it's so important that we do that now, especially because we can all enjoy these games and events together without politics getting involved, and really root and have a good time in this country and across the world.
Bert?
First of all, the mainstream media sucks. If I lived in Europe and listened to all the things that the media has to say, CNN, MS Now, what have you, I would not want to come visit America. I mean, it took a World Cup here in order to attract them to come here. So I guess soccer actually does have a lot of value. Not to every American. The NFL hasn't started yet. So I have lived overseas a lot. My mother was from the Netherlands. She was Dutch. I spent a lot of my time in Europe, Netherlands, Germany, Italy. I lived in Japan. I lived in Korea. I lived in Panama. I lived in Afghanistan. I lived in Iraq. And the one thing that veterans will tell you who served overseas, they become realists. They can compare what works in other countries and mainly what doesn't work. They know how great America is. So that's one reason I think veterans all should be leaders in this country, because they can compare and contrast. So everybody that comes here says, you know, America is nothing like what we heard it would be. And so I'll get back to saying the mainstream media sucks. I hope it changes. I'm going to do everything I can to make them come to see basic common sense solutions.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. When our now son-in-law Kyle was courting our daughter Mary Catherine, he was applying for jobs to become a policeman. Our daughter informed him that that job was not safe and she didn't want to live on a daily basis not knowing if he would come home. Instead, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. True story. And became a machine gunner infantryman. Can't make it up. And deployed twice abroad, including time in the Persian Gulf. He's currently a sergeant recruiting in upstate New York and is slated to leave the Corps later this fall. What will you do in the United States Senate to create safer and, frankly, cleaner streets that will attract more willing and qualified people to police our communities? Kim?
I am a supporter and will definitely look out for our military, our veterans, our first responders, and their families. In supporting our military for 16 years at the Department of Defense, now War, I saw what they did for our country. I appreciate what our veterans did for our country, and as the CFO for the First Responder Network Authority, I saw every day what our first responders do for our communities and to save lives. That's why they're number one. They're all number one in my book. And one thing I'm going to do come day one to protect our first responders and our military is I want to reauthorize the First Responder Network Authority. Senator Warner has not yet, nor any senator, has introduced legislation to reauthorize the network for our first responders that will save more lives and protect our communities. So by me protecting our first responders, that will just help them protect you all and all of us together.
Bert?
So I spent 41 years in uniform. I led 4 combat tours. I've been under intense fire. I've lost soldiers. I've had the enemy lose more soldiers. I'm a big believer in our uniform services, whether they're at home or abroad. When I took the oath to get promoted every time, the U.S. Constitution, and I've done it at least 10 times, support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We forget about that domestic part. So I applaud our uniformed police officers, our firefighters, and everybody else who are first responders. I would do everything I can to outlaw sanctuary cities and zones. I would deny them any federal grants. I mean, there is a federalism issue. We can't force them to do certain things, but I want to make those unacceptable in every corner of our nation. Thank you.
David?
So when I first started in the Navy, I enlisted in the Navy. Then I went over into the Marine Corps and became an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. 2 tours in Iraq and a combat tour. Then I went over to the State Department to become more refined, I guess, and to get rid of all those Marine ways. And then I became a CIA officer where I ended up serving as a chief of station. But I always caveat that Trump CIA. And so I know what it means to serve. I served in some really bad places around the world, all because I love this country, and it is the greatest nation in the world. And so we have to make sure that is what distinguishes us from the rest of the world, is the law and order that we have here in the United States. And so we have to make sure that we support our local and federal law enforcement and stop Spamberger from making this a sanctuary state.
to Bert. Virginia is not a physical border state, but illegal immigration touches every state through labor markets, fentanyl, and strained federal resources. What border and enforcement measures would you prioritize, and would you support a path to legal status for any category of people already here?
To answer the second part of your question, no. I think that you should come here legally, and anybody who's come here illegally.
Let's start that over. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. I think the answer is no. I think if you came here illegally, you should not remain here legally. I think we should not put those people ahead of the people who have taken the time here legally, okay? And I am the son of an immigrant. My mother is from the Netherlands. I'm the grandson of immigrants. But they came here, they worked hard, they followed the laws, they served, they've actually died in combat for our nation. They assimilated into our culture and into our values. The reason people come here is because our culture and our values. So when they come here and they don't assimilate, I think that they're leaving these other countries that they came from because it wasn't working for them there. So I don't want also the border states who get all these illegals to come in and then they get counted in the census, giving them a disproportionate amount of congressional representation whose policies affect all the other states in our nation. So we need to get rid of that policy of counting illegal immigrants in our census so only Americans are represented by our lawmakers. Thank you.
David?
All right, so one, we have to finish the wall. The second thing is we have to end, stop, and release. And then the third thing is we're going to have to make sure that we are supporting our Border Patrol. And those are three crucial components of our national security, because what you're seeing, if we don't get out and vote, they are going to open the border right back up. And then we're going to have fentanyl coming back into this country and coming into this area, which has been hard hit. And so Trump has done an amazing job, the first president ever to actually stop and close the border to illegal trafficking there. And so we have to continue that. We have to make sure that we get out and get the right people in Congress so that we can hold the line. Because if not, they are going to reopen the borders, and I know that people don't want that, right? I'm in the right place then.
Kim?
I am all for legal immigration. And when I talk to legal immigrants in this country who have become citizens, they too were frustrated with the process and the bureaucracy involved in the process. So I will fully support President Trump and what he is doing because I appreciate what he is doing for our country when it comes to closing the borders and keeping this country safe. It is a national security concern. Just look at what happened on the White House lawn almost. If we didn't have our national security involved and engaged, we might not have the wrestling event that was going on the lawn. So I want to make sure that we focus on, and I want to focus on the inefficiencies in the processes to make them more efficient and effective so we won't have as many illegal immigrants trying to get across the border, but fully support President Trump in keeping the border closed and secure as he has.
Moving to the Second Amendment. Virginia has passed a number of firearms restrictions in recent years. What's your position on federal gun legislation, starting with David, including red flag laws, and would you support any new restrictions at the federal level or only work to protect current rights? David, 1 minute.
So I wouldn't support any restrictions, period. As a combat vet, I know how important it is to be able to protect my family and protect myself. And that is what they are trying to take. Do not let them do that. That is what they are trying to take away from us today. And they're looking at banning guns, putting sales tax on when you go to buy an arms, and then also the carry and conceal. They're looking at taking that away from us. And so I have the receipts. I've been out. I went to the rally. I spoke at the rally there. I've been out as a strong proponent to make sure that we fight against that, because that is our God-given right. And so as your senator, I will continue to make sure that I fight for that. And we, as Virginians, we have to get out, though. We have to make some noise. Talk to people that might not necessarily understand those laws and let them know what's going on, and we will win in November.
Kim.
As the daughter of parents who owned one of the largest gun stores in Texas, I fully support the Second Amendment and will fight for our Second Amendment rights. Yes, it is unacceptable what our current governor is doing to us in trying to take away our constitutional rights, our Second Amendment. I will not stand for it. I definitely will not stand for it as your next U.S. Senator, and I will fight so that you can keep your guns and your constitutional rights that you deserve.
So I am a lifelong charter member of the most powerful gun organization in America, the ARMY. I understand the value of weapons, and I did what I could do. The Second Amendment issue was at the federal level, the province of our judicial branch. I helped Donald Trump get elected in 2016. He was able to select 3 Supreme Court justices. Coincidentally, one of them was Neil Gorsuch, my summer intern when we were attorneys together in 1991, and he's done me very proud. So the Brune decision in 2022 has secured your Second Amendment rights. Whatever the Democrats are trying to do in Richmond, I'm confident that it'll be ruled unconstitutional, and I think that you all basically should be secure in your Second Amendment rights, and the federal level will overrule what the crazy Democrats in Richmond are trying to do now. Thank you.
Going to Kim. Following the Dobbs decision, which returned the question of abortion to the states for consideration, many Republicans have supported legal abortion up to 15 weeks of gestation, including Governor Glenn Youngkin. Is it fair to say that Republicans are now pro-choice?
Well, I'm not sure that I can speak for all Americans, but what I can tell you is that I am going to be a pro-life vote in the Senate. And I highly, highly recommend that all of you get out and vote no on the abortion amendment that's coming up in November. That is going to be so important, and it's going to, again, sound very, very fair, but again, please read the language yourself, because it's not just about abortions, it's also about making sure that parents are involved in their children's decisions and in their lives. So please, be like me, vote no on that abortion amendment and the other 2 amendments that are coming up in November. But please be sure to read it so you understand why you're voting no. It's very clear.
Bert?
Yes, I am pro-life, and America needs more precious lives coming into our world. It's almost at the point now where it's getting to be a national security issue. I think the latest statistics by 2030, we will have more organic deaths than we have births in this country. So I believe in the sanctity of life. I think we need more babies as not only a moral issue, but as a national security issue. And no, I do not think that Republicans are becoming pro-life. I think there's some decisions that had to be made, and in some ways we may not be the majority. But once again, I saw that the Supreme Court was where the battle was. The 1973 Roe v. Wade, almost any thinking attorney or judge could see that that was bad law, but it took decades to get the right justices. And that's one reason I tell people, as your senator, I'm going to ask to get on the Senate Judiciary Committee, because the judicial branches become so important in a lot of the key decisions and fundamental issues in our nation. Thank you.
David?
Yeah. In the good book, Jeremiah says, before you were conceived, I knew you. All life is precious, and I do believe that we are in some dark times and that our country is coming to a reckoning. And so we have to, this is something that there shouldn't even be a debate on if you should be able to abort at the day of birth. That is just, for me, a very difficult thing to think about. And so for us, as voters, that is what we need to be out there. We need to be getting out there, talking to people about this, because that is an 80-20 issue. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand what they are trying to pass. And so I would encourage you all just to get out there and talk to people and let them know what the Dems are doing in Richmond.
Following up on that question, Kim, you mentioned the constitutional amendments. I'll give you another 30 seconds to follow up on the specifics of those amendments, and I'll ask the gentleman to follow you.
Yeah, so the other amendment is basically allows ex-convicts to vote. And the way it's written, it actually allows even pedophiles to vote. And it also does not even require people to go to prison that would be considered ex-convicts. They too will be able to vote. So that's why I'm voting no on that amendment. And the other amendment, I also will be voting no on.
Thank you.
The marriage.
30 seconds. Bert?
Well, I smell a rat when it comes from the Democrats, especially in this Richmond leadership, okay? If there's one thing that we should learn from this redistricting amendment with their language in there, is that they have an ulterior motive, and I believe that's true with all three of these amendments. There's one issue that I have not heard anybody discuss on the restoration of voting rights for felons, and that is with these liberal activist judges we have, that will cause them to lower the sentences so these people can get back on the streets earlier. Because what the amendment says is they can vote as soon as they get out of incarceration, not when they end their probation, which is actually part of the sentence.
Thank you. And David?
Yes, I would not support any of those ballot amendments, period. What you're seeing is they are trying to disguise and trying to dupe the Virginia people. And we have to be smarter than that. Once again, this goes back to education. We have to get the word out. It's one thing for us to be in here speaking and preaching amongst the choir. The other part is that we have to get out and we have to start educating people on these laws that are not going to benefit America at all.
Speaking of education, many Virginia parents want more say in their children's education and more options outside their assigned public school. Congress has now approved a federal tax credit of up to $1,700 per student for donations to scholarship-granting organizations, which states can opt into starting next year. Would you support Virginia opting in, and how do you answer critics who say school choice policies like this drain funding from public schools? Bert?
I think parents should have a say in anything affecting their minor children, including this abortion amendment that they're trying to shove down our throats in November. The same goes for education. Who knows better than the needs of their child, the person that was brought into this world, than the parents? So I fully support whatever parents want to do, and if that gives them more options on how their children get educated, I'm all for it.
David?
Yeah, what you're seeing in the schools right now is indoctrination. They are teaching your kids, little kids, kindergartners, things that are repulsive. And so we have to get it back to the states. You all should be the ones that are telling what should be taught in the schools and make sure that they're also asking you for consent on if these young, precious minds would like to do something with their body that's irreversible. And so that is what is happening right now. And so we have to make sure that, as far as your question, we are, if we pay taxes, you should have the choice of where your child goes. And so I would support that as well.
And Kim.
I am all for parents being involved in their children's education. And if they choose to homeschool their children because of the curriculum that's being introduced in schools right now, then it's the parents' choice to homeschool their children. And when it comes to the funding, again, I bring it down to accountability. The one county in Virginia that's getting the least amount of help in funding has the highest test scores. But yet the county that is getting the most funding has the worst test scores. So let's incentivize that, let's change that and hold schools accountable. And those schools that do get good outcomes, that have those higher test scores, they get more funding rather than wasting the money that they're obviously not using properly and effectively to treat and educate our children. Those counties should not get the funding as much as those who do show good outcomes.
Okay. One final question, and then we'll go to closing remarks. Back to David Williams. The Senate's most lasting power may be confirming federal judges. What's your standard for a qualified nominee, and would you support changing Senate rules, including the legislative filibuster, to move confirmations or legislation faster?
So, as a Christian conservative, we must make sure that we have the right judges and people in power. And that is what we will continue to do as far as we get out. That's how we vote, to make sure that we get those individuals, the right people in. Trump was able to get the folks that are in there now, which you see that they are holding the gates from all the craziness that was going on, that could take place. And so that's the importance of that. As far as the filibuster, that will need to happen at some point, especially with the Save America Act. You know, that is so important that we get that passed. And President Trump, I think, understands the importance. And I think that this week, hopefully, we should hear some good news. And so, yes.
Thank you. Kim?
So I fully support how President Trump is selecting his nominees for the Supreme Court, and I support his approach to filibusters. What I want to do, though, is focus on the judicial system, which is, and actually I already have been. I want to make sure that our defendants are treated fairly and our system is fair on the judicial side and the judicial branch, which is why I have been on the Judicial Citizens Advisory Council for Fairfax County for many years, making sure the policies and the rules for the judicial system related to juveniles and domestic relations is fair and reasonable, and I will support President Trump in making sure that it's fair and reasonable in our Supreme Court.
Bert.
I'm the only candidate here who has served in the United States Senate. I served, once again, as a 3-star level professional staff member. I actually brought something for show and tell. It's the book on Senate procedure. It's this thick. And unless you know the way the process works, you're not going to get the results. I'm also the only attorney here. I'm also admitted to the United States Supreme Court. I know the importance of making sure that the judges that we vet and that get confirmed to serve there are so important given their lifelong tenure. I would rather go short than have the wrong judges up there. That's one reason, justices. That's one reason I will make being on the Senate Judiciary my priority, because once again, it's so fundamental to America and its way of life.
Thank you all so much for a very informative forum. We appreciate your participation and look forward to a robust nomination on August 4th. Please get out and vote. Closing remarks. Please give them a round of applause. And also, thank you for adhering to the rules on civility. Well done. We very much appreciate that. We'll now move to 2-minute closing remarks, beginning with Kim Farrington. 2 minutes.
Washington is broken, and I know how to fix it. And with my 33 years that I've seen and experienced it and felt powerless by my management who wouldn't let me make change, even though I knew we could save 50% of your taxpayer dollars, that just really bothered me, which is why I'm running for U.S. Senate. I want to go in and be Virginia's CPA. I want to hold programs accountable. I want to follow the money, not just spend it like the elected officials we currently have there today are doing. We need accountability, and we need to get those those programs that are not being used effectively and efficiently, get that money back for you and put it in your wallets and purses. And I know how to do that. I will have zero learning curve. I have been at the federal level for 33 years, and that's what you need, is somebody with that experience and already knows where all of those inefficiencies and waste is already existing, and I want to go after that. I am so excited to partner with President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance and the Anti-Fraud Task Force. I can share with them where I know there's legislation that needs to be passed, and I'll work with the executive branch to make sure we do close those loopholes so that fraudsters don't get your money any longer. I have been, as I mentioned, crisscrossing the Commonwealth because I believe in all of you and want to represent you. I want to be your voice in the Senate. And ladies and gentlemen, we can beat Mark Warner. He only won by 0.8% last midterm. Let's get together, let's get out and vote, and we can take over and totally trounce Mark Warner. I want to thank you all for your time and attention today, and I want to also thank you in advance for those of you who have voted for me already, and if you haven't, I would appreciate your vote on or before August 4th. God bless each of you, God bless the Commonwealth, God bless America.
Thank you. Bert, so I would like to thank you all for coming out, and those of you who are following this streaming, thank you for being engaged. Also, Marshall Patty and the city elders, where are you, Marshall? I know you set this up. Thank you for doing this. Oh, there you go. Bruce Schlesman and the Family Foundation Action, thank you for setting it up as well. When we first agreed to come to this forum, the key points that Chris Saxman asked us was they want to see contrast among the three candidates, and I think that's only fair to try to point them out. I also mentioned that I've spent a lot of time at different places with the two other candidates, and I really don't see much of a difference on the issue. So what I ask people to do is focus on the candidate with the best chance of beating Mark Warner in November, number one, and number two, who can best serve your interests and the interests of America as your U.S. Senator. So first of all, I'm very proud to announce that your U.S. Congressman Ben Cline has endorsed me in this race. Second of all, even though I got into this race last, I ended up getting more signatures than anybody in this race. I got over 19,000 signatures, even more than Mark Warner. And so we've earned the honor of being named first on the ballot. And I mention that because your guru here, Chris Saxman, didn't even know the rule on that. So I'm very proud of that fact. But more importantly, it shows the uprising of support that I've had all over the Commonwealth after getting in the race so late. A couple of distinguishing features. I've been in Virginia for 50 years. I have been supporting Republican presidential candidates since 1988, every single one of them. I have been donating to Republican candidates in Virginia and at the federal level since the early 90s. And I'm very proud of what we were before. I want the Virginia in 2026 not to be the Virginia of 2025. I'm going to do everything I can help to make it that way. I'm the only person on the stage who helped Donald Trump get elected, and the only person on the stage who was appointed by President Trump. So I'll ask you to vote Bert early, go to the beach, come back after Labor Day, and help us win in November. Thank you so much.
So I'm the only person that apparently Donald Trump knows is running for Virginia. and he wants Virginia to make some noise, and that is what we're going to do. So I'm not interviewing for a job to get into the administration. I'm running to beat Mark Warner. And we can absolutely do that if we do three things. The first thing we have to do is we have to unite the Republican Party under our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, and a good candidate. And just like Bert said, we have to look at who's going to bring the most independent voters into the party and making sure that we keep that conservative standard up. And so that is what we have to ask, because at this point, we have to win elections. So we're not looking at the popularity contest. We are in a fight for Virginia. And if not, Virginia is going to turn blue. And so is that what you all want? No. So then you need to get out, and we need to talk to those independent voters that are very upset about the high taxes out of Richmond, the encroachment on 2A laws, and also the gerrymandering that they already voted 2/3 against. And so that is what we have to do. And we have to meet them where they are and give them a candidate that they're going to be willing to vote for. As far as I'm very popular in the 9th District, very popular here, because I get out and I talk to the people. I won the straw poll in the 9th District by 70%. Because they understand that we need a fighter. And that is what I'm going to do for you, Virginia. God bless you. God bless our great Commonwealth. And thank you for having me.
One more round of applause for our candidates and their hard work this campaign season. Now for concluding remarks, Bruce from Family Foundation Action. Thank you, Bruce.
Hey guys, I am Bruce Schlesman, Executive Director of Family Foundation Action. Just first, another round of applause for our candidates. Great job. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to our moderator, Chris Saxman. You always do such a great job, so thank you again for the questions and the way it was structured. All right, so on the screen in a second is going to be a QR code. That QR code is going to go to a straw poll. We're going to leave it on screen as you guys filter out. At the conclusion of this event, you are welcome to go vote. We'll also be emailing it out to attendees, and so you'll be able to see it a few ways. So I encourage you to scan that and go vote for which candidate you guys would be voting for. The other thing I mentioned is it was brought up in our questions today about the amendments. So Family Foundation Action this year is going to be focusing the most on running the campaign to defeat the abortion and the marriage amendment this November. A lot of you guys know that. A lot of you guys have been in the know. You care about this issue. This is one of the most important issues on the ballot. So I encourage you to, if you don't know about these amendments, go outside. There's information on the table out there, on the City Elders and Family Foundation Action table. There are yard signs. I also encourage you to go to our website, familyfoundationaction.org. if you want to help support our fight with a donation, because we're going to need it. We're facing down Soros money in Planned Parenthood. It is imperative that we not let the left successfully hijack our Constitution with these constitutional amendments. So thank you guys all again for being here, and please vote in the forum. Thank you again to our candidates.